Magandang araw mga kaproyekto. Welcome to Proyekto Pilipino. Welcome to the new season of 2024. Sabi nga ho namin, 'di ba, after several weekends of replays, we're finally coming up with this new episode. And napakaganda ho ng episode natin, this first episode for 2024. Pag-uusapan natin with so much hope, how do we really allow our people, majority of our people, to be able to enjoy the fruits of the economy, no? And in topic natin ngayon ho ay inclusive growth, no? And of course, we're very privileged, we're very grateful na kasama ho natin isa sa mga authorities, but more than authority on the topic is someone who's very passionate about this whole work for inclusive growth, ano? Very very interesting lang background, Carlo, ni Willy, no, is that he is a brand and strategy management expert, guru, no?
Wow.
And work with foreign brands, international brands, and yet his heart is in exclusive growth, no? So maraming salamat, Willie, for joining us, and thank you for really the honor and the privilege of sharing your passion and your advocacy with us, no?
Thank you very much, Father Tito. As I told you last Sunday, we have been following your online masses ever since the onset of the pandemic, and we've been very moved, especially by your homilies, no? If I may digress a bit, no? Sabi ko, ito lang yata si Father Tito ang hindi nagda-digress, hindi nagdi-distract from the gospel reading whenever he does his homily. Yung iba kasi, with all due respect, no, to other priests, talagang nawawala. Kayo po, Father, talagang napansin ko, you are so focused on the gospel reading for the day, and that allows you to dig deep. Ang lalim po ng
Thank you.
inyong mga insights
Thank
and
you,
reflections, no?
Yeah,
Bukod
thank
doon, Father, you have never failed to translate. Ginagawa niyong bilingual para sa ating mga kababayan, no? Those English as well as Tagalog. Napaka-husay po yun. At ang pinaka sa lahat, every time you always remind us, Father, in your homilies, pinakamahirap nga, sabi niyo, like today, no? That's what you said also. After you finish your homily, you ask yourself, am I prepared, no, to live, to practice what I preach, no? Isa buhay, isa gawa, isa puso ang aking homilya. Napakaganda po. Kaya po, ako naman po, I'm very, very honored and very humbled and privileged to join you in your advocacy, no, for Proyekto
Thank you.
Pilipino. So,
Thank you, Willie. Yeah. And Carlo, when I met Willie in the chapel, no, he said he follows Proyekto Pilipino. So sabi ko, wow, so can we guest you? Can we guest you? So Carlo is one of our co-founding hosts, no? Of course, we have Manolo Quezon and Lele
Yes.
Claudia, but both are traveling, no? Both are traveling now in the middle of traveling. So, but sabi ko, but we have to have this new episode, and we have to really open the year for us, no? Because this is a very relevant topic, you know.
Yes. Sayang nga, Father, dito kasi I'm sure Leloy would have been so interested to talk about this kasi we're gonna
well, maybe we can have Willie back. We can have Willie back.
Yeah,
With
definitely.
Lele around. Yeah.
Because we're gonna delve into the economy and development, and one of the things that was mentioned earlier was the topic of inclusive growth. So, Sir Willie, pwede nyo bang i-explain sa amin kung ano yung konsepto ng inclusive growth and how does this connect with the larger issue of community building or nation building?
Thank you very much, Carlo, for the question. No? So inclusive growth, we've been hearing this term in the past maybe 5 years or 10 years because of the realization that the traditional form of capitalism, which, as Father Tito pointed out, trickle-down economics, which means you allow the rich to get rich, all right? You give them tax breaks, you give them all kinds of subsidies and support, and hopefully in the future they will start to trickle down to the greater majority of the population. Unfortunately, as we all know, sa buong mundo, kadalasan hindi po nagiging mabisa ang trickle-down economics. Like Father Tito saying, no less than Pope Francis I himself. And we know he's the vicar of Christ. So essentially, this is Jesus Christ telling the world this is not working. Hello, all right. So therefore, what is the alternative? No. At the same time, my career, as Father Tito was saying, we were blessed to have been given an opportunity to work around Asia Pacific, no, Carlo. And as you know, Asia Pacific witnessed the greatest economic miracle in the history of humanity, especially China, where 800 million people were uplifted from poverty to middle income status in one generation, which is 25, 30 years, no? And the rest of Asia Pacific followed, sadly, Carlo, except the Philippines. So, ang side effect ng aking paglibot sa Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and now even Vietnam has overtaken us. Ang side effect naman nun, nakita ko rin with my own eyes. So hindi po ako, hindi po teorya to. This is not theory. But I'm sharing with you a synthesis of the Asian economic miracle in a few minutes, no? And what is that? It's very simple, no? They did not sell to the poor. They bought from the poor.
Okay.
They bought from the poor farmer, from the poor fisherman, from the poor laborer and the poor worker. They did not haggle them down. They bought from the MSME entrepreneur, and they bought from the agri-cooperative. And then they innovated on those products to add value, and then they sold to the rich, first within their countries, and then finding out that the world is a much bigger market and a much richer market than their own countries. They started exporting. I'm sure you've realized by now that the secret of the Asian economic miracle is an export discipline. Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China. No? Imagine this, Carlo. No? China is the world's largest consumer market, correct? 1.2, 1.3 billion. So, theoretically, their businessmen did not have to go overseas. They could have just sold locally and nakalaki ng market. But they were smart enough to say, wait a minute, our people are poor. We should sell to the world. Alam nyo, ang economics at the end of the day, I was blessed with a scholarship to earn a Master's of Science in Industrial Economics, but I did not learn it there. I did not learn it in UP. I learned it from seeing it happen all over Asia Pacific. This is the Asian School of Economics that is not taught in any of our schools. Nada. It is not taught in our postgraduate schools. Why? Because none of our economists or doctors studied in these countries. They did not see the Asian economic miracle unfold. No? So it's just amazing that the pattern is consistent. No? It's all about modernizing agriculture. Huwag niyong papabayaan. Unlike some economists, sadly, I hear on national Zoom, Carlo, believe it or not, some of our top economists, so-called economists, tell us, forget agriculture, forget manufacturing. They have hollowed out. I was so shocked. You know, Carlo, even the United States, the world's richest country, the world's most powerful country, the world's most technologically advanced country, the most innovative country, can produce enough food to feed half the world. Why? So they can control half the world. Whoever controls the food, kahit yung iba may AI, kahit may electric, if you don't control the food, like what we experience now, we don't have food security. China is so the US is the super power of the world. China is the super factory of the world. But China also did not neglect. In fact, for China, agriculture was the foundation of the economic development. As we will learn later on in the talk, no, agriculture, which is food production, no, don't call it a sector agriculture. It is food production. And we all know without food, there's nothing. There's no life. So food production, agriculture, is the foundation of any nation and the mother of all industries. People don't realize it, but even the most expensive electric vehicle, even the most expensive Italian luxury car, cannot run without rubber tires, okay, made in Malaysia, using rubber trees grown in Malaysia. Even the most expensive French or Italian luxury bags are made from cow hide. Or the most expensive single malt whiskey, the most expensive champagne, wine, alcohol, they're all made, brandy, they're all made from agriculture. Can you imagine? And yet our economists, and I don't want to mention their names out of Christian charity, they all say, forget agriculture, forget manufacturing. And then so I asked in this Zoom meeting, Carlo, how do you propose to pay for them? You know what they said? Oh, we will just pay for them. We import everything, import all our food, our rice, our corn, our sugar, okay, our dairy, our livestock, our poultry, our swine, everything, okay? Our shoes, our clothes, our motorcycles and cars, import everything, our steel bars. How would they pay for them? You know what they said, Carlo? We will just pay for them with the remittances of our OFWs and our call center agents. So, Carlo, instead of exporting world-class quality products, which is the secret of Asia, we exported a world-class quality people. That's why the OFW strategy is the most, how do you say it? Is the worst economic tragedy that has befallen us. As I said, no, if the greatest triumph of the Philippine economy over the past 50 years has been the OFW phenomenon, the greatest tragedy will be if their children and their grandchildren will continue to be OFWs themselves.
The sad thing there, Sir Willie, is this was supposed to be a stopgap measure.
Exactly. Exactly. Na ginawang cornerstone. Oh my goodness. It's incredible. Let me just dimensionalize this. No? Back in 2010, as former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was exiting, she had their economic team. Everybody, the NEDA, DTI, Banco Central, DOF, present to a whole grand ballroom full of bankers, dignitaries, businessmen, business leaders, academe, in the Makati Shangri-La Grand Ballroom, 2010. I'll never forget this. I was invited, so I attended. And after listening to all of them, at the end of the day, it was the same story. They were hanging their hats on the OFW remittances. There was no other plan. So I couldn't resist it anymore. Father Tito and Carlo, I raised my hand. I was one of the first to raise my hand. I asked, so it seems that you're just hanging your hats on the OFW remittances, which at the time was already $30 billion. It never really grew. So I did the math for them. So I go, if you take $30 billion, which seems huge, so if you take $30 billion, divide by 15 million OFWs, that's only $2,000 per OFW per year, per capita. Divide by 12 months, that's only $155 per month. Divide by a family of 5, 30 per person. Divide by 30 days, that's essentially $1 per person per day, per OFW family. And I'll never forget, Carlo, Father, the response of the NEDA undersecretary. It haunts me to this day. And he said, in front of all these top business leaders, said, Mr. Arcilla, because I identify myself, tama po kayo. Maliit po yan. Pero pag pinagsama-sama po natin yung maliit na yan, malaki pa rin po yan. You know, Father, in that grand ballroom, there was a pregnant pause. People were just so shocked with the reply of the top economists of the country. I was so dumbfounded. No, there's no plan. Unlike other countries, no, Father and Carlo, sa Singapore, China, lahat po yan, they have a 5-year development plan, which they improve on every 3 to 5 years. No matter who is sitting as president or prime minister, they get an opportunity to analyze what works, what does not work, what do we stop doing, what do we start doing, what do we try doing, what do we innovate on, what do we continue doing. So there's continuous improvement and progress on their development plan. So imagine, Singapore is on its 12th 5-year development plan. Samantala tayo, every time, palit ng palit. China is on its 15th 5-year. That is continuity. Just like
Yeah.
any business, no, Father and Carlo. I'm sure you will agree. No business CEO will change everything whenever he assumes he will studiously, diligently, all right, do the, I guess, due diligence, what is working and what do we need to improve on. Dito ho, wala tayong ganon. So it's really an OFW-led economy, which unfortunately is exacerbated, Carlo, and I don't see Carlo. Is Carlo there?
I think he's gonna come back. I think his connection just got down. But please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So, Father, one of the reasons why we continue to be poor after, as you know, as I've said in my videos, we've grown tenfold, $30 billion in 1986, that's a one, to $300 billion. That's annual GDP, huh? Father.
Okay.
Annual output, that's not small. That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Tenfold. Unfortunately, our number of poor people have also increased.
Yeah.
Based on the Social Weather Station survey, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Dr. Mahar Mangahas,
Yeah.
and also another group, it's the same. 48 to 50% claim to be poor, admit to being poor. Another 30% say they are borderline poor. Sometimes they're poor, sometimes they're not. Meaning, if you add those two, we have 80% of 110, which is about 90 million, Father Tito, not 9 million. 90 million Filipinos, 40 years after EDSA 1, are poor.
Poor.
We have
Yeah.
more people today in the Philippines than Marcos time. And not only that, we have more poor people today than China. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Sabi ko, that's utterly unbelievable. That's
Yeah.
why I'm so passionate like this, like I guess you are with all your advocacies, no?
Yeah.
It's just surreal.
Yeah.
It's
Really,
yeah.
if I may throw in two things that has always been in my mind, ano, and then maybe we can discuss this, ano. Number one, you said that Asia is the economic miracle, no? Which
Yes,
I
ma'am.
agree with, no? Now, number one, back in 2013, ADB came out with an article based on the study they made that the greatest wealth created during the first decade of the 2000s, yung pinaka biggest wealth creation, Asia, Southeast Asia. Okay, one. Pero sabi niya, yung problema is the Gini index, which measures the gap, di ba, between the rich and the poor, or those who have access to resources and those who don't, is widening in Southeast Asia. Before, ang pinakagrabe was Sub-Saharan Africa and then the Caribbean. But because of the programs they put in, the Gini index was being addressed, no? Pero sa Southeast Asia, hindi, no? And sabi nila, one of the exceptions was Vietnam because of two things. Number one, they invested in agriculture. Number one. Number two, equal, hindi one or two in order of importance. So, they invested in education. So sabi nung article, they're reaping the demographic dividend. Okay? So that's one input that I want to share. The second really is this. Goldman Sachs came out with that projection of the world's biggest economies by 2075, no? And number among the top 15 is the Philippines, no? And we're number 14, okay? Based on GDP growth, no? And of course, nabanggit doon, which is a function of the population, etc., no? But, taking these two together, that's why I was very, that you mentioned that do not neglect agriculture. Again, clearly, Vietnam proves that, that not only for the economy, but for greater equality, no? Wala inclusive growth, di ba? You need to attend to the agricultural sector. And number two, I'm worried about the 2075 projection. Sabi ko, wow, on the surface, parang wow, okay, we're number 14. But the question that I have in my mind, my God, ito na naman yung worsening of the economic gap. And of course, in my talks as I work for Caritas Philippines, no, sinasabi ko palagi when I go around why we should begin to try to create programs for the poor, no, that would help in the empower and development of the poorer sectors. Lagi ko sinasabi sa mga tao na ang big scandal natin hindi lang poverty. But ang big scandal natin yung gap. Those have access to resources and those who don't have access. And for me, and I'm not criticizing the families. Ha? Imagine really the last I'm not sure now if it's an SW, maybe not, but maybe Forbes, the Forbes, di ba, they always come out with the richest, etc. And I'm not sure if it was this year or last year or 2 years ago, the 10 richest families in the Philippines, kontrolado nila ang resources and they have more resources than the lower 50% of the population. And here is where inclusive growth becomes very, very critical, no? Given that situation. So Willie, go ahead.
Thank you, Father. Let me add my perspective, my take on those three comments, no, about being the outlier for Southeast Asia, about the Philippines being one of the top, but then the question is again not just the quantity but the quality of the growth, and of course the inequality or the control of resources. The first one, Vietnam. I worked there for 2 years, Father, as part of my career then, no, and I remember so distinctly. First of all, the food. You will not see any idle land in Vietnam, not a single plot. Because it's a communist country, the government owns it. They give it to you for long-term lease. But the minute you leave land unproductive, uncultivated, the government takes it and gives it to a more hardworking farmer.
Okay.
Okay. Not only that, of course, they give the whole support of high yield seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation, mechanization, everything, biotechnology, everything. All right. What is the result? Their food is so abundant in surplus. Have you been to Vietnam, Father?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you must have tasted the great Vietnamese food from the streets. They're all
Yes,
fresh.
yeah.
That's why fast foods do. That's why fast food is no market there, because everything is fresh. And because it's in surplus, the price is so low, food is so cheap. Because food is so cheap, pag may mahirap, walang gutom, Father. Doon ko nakita, there's a difference pala between poverty and hunger. Sa Pilipinas, the poor are hungry, the hungry are poor. Sa Vietnam, merong mahirap pero walang gutom. Dahil walang gutom, walang stunting physically, at walang low IQ because of undeveloped brain cells ng mga bata.
Yeah.
And then you can put in overlay education, Father. Kasi nga may brain cells eh. Father, my father was a surgeon. And many years ago, when he was still alive, he saw me busying myself, trying to help poor kids, no, in their tutoring education. And you know what he said? I'll never forget it. He said, you know, Willie, to calm me down, all right? Kahit ano pang gawin mong intervention sa education ng bata, from the moment of conception in the mother's womb up to the age of 5, the child never received proper nutrition, you can forget about his IQ.
Yeah.
Sad, but it's a medical fact.
Yeah.
And we have
really,
deaths
that was
of millions of.
Yeah, that was one of the things we discussed with Dr. Shell Abito. He's now, di ba, Dr. Shell is championing the anti-stunting movement. That's one of his great advocacies. Anyway, please continue. Yeah. Go ahead, Will.
So but Father, there's more than that. There's something else that's very, very important. You know, Vietnam. Why is Vietnam attracting foreign direct investments by the hundreds of billions? People will say because their wages are low. All right? Their wages, Father Tito, if ours is at 600 pesos per day, they are at half, 300 pesos per day. Wow. So back in 2008, I was invited to do a lecture at a top postgraduate school in economics here in the Philippines. So I asked that question, why do you think Vietnam can afford to pay their wages half our daily minimum wage? And Father, the response was classic, vintage American Western brainwashing. It must be prison labor, it must be child labor or forced labor. It took a mainland Chinese student to stand up and say, Sir, their food must be cheap.
Mhm.
Bingo. Not a single one of our Filipino masteral students understand the connection that if your food is abundant, not only are your children healthy and smart, not only are your workers strong and clever, but your wages can be made very competitive. You will now attract foreign direct investments by the hundreds of billions of dollars. Okay,
Yeah.
because that's the best combination that any foreign investor would love. Okay? So, kaya Father, kaya wala tayong mga trabaho. Kaya wala tayong manufacturing. No economist has ever connected that. No Filipino economist can connect it. That the reason why we have no manufacturing, that the reason why it's all closed down is because of high wages, is because our food is expensive.
Mhm.
Unlike Vietnam. You know, Father, when I was in Vietnam, I was brought to, if you remember during the Vietnam War, the Americans, in a desperate measure, they poisoned the land with Agent Orange. Do you remember Agent Orange that basically polluted with chemicals their land and destroyed foliage to reveal their camps? You know what the Vietnamese did right after April 1973 when the Americans left? Their people started replanting mangroves.
Mhm.
Now, Agent Orange, that land has become the lungs of Saigon, of Ho Chi Minh. So, as you know, where mangroves are, that's where your fish, your crustaceans, and birds and all kinds of animals will live and thrive. So, food is very abundant. So, I was served a plate where you have a whole lot of rice, white rice. You have a quarter chicken or fish, fresh fish. Carlo, good to see you back. And then you have a lot of vegetables, and fresh fruits. So I asked, how much is this plate? Okay, let me ask you, Carlo, how much do you think today, no, is a plate of siguro mga 2 cups of rice, a quarter chicken, vegetables, fresh fruits? How much would that cost here?
Ako, ngayon, mga nasa 150, 200 pesos up na yan.
150.
Yeah.
Correct. 200 pesos. Okay. So in one day, you have to maybe spend 600, right?
Isang tao lang
For
yun.
3 meals.
Yeah.
Oh, isang tao, 3 meals, no? About 600 pesos. Sabihin natin $10, di ba? Alam niyo kung magkakano yon, Father, yung pinakain sa akin na gano'n? $1. 50 pesos. Teka muna ha. That's for 3 meals. In other words, it's 50 pesos divided by 3. That is the price of one full meal. You know, in my shock,
Mhm.
I wept. Naiyak po talaga ako. And the Vietnamese official, the government official who was my guide, got so shocked. Why are you crying? What did we do? I'm crying for my people. Because
So,
they studied agriculture here in UP Los Baños.
so hindi sila nag-i-import ng kahit anong pagkain, kahit anong
Wala,
produce.
wala. You know, well, if ever they do, you know, they're now the world's number 2 exporter of rice after Thailand, and they will overtake Thailand. They're the number 1 exporter of high value agriculture like cashew nuts, okay, tiger prawns, okay. Ang galing, coffee. They never even knew the taste of coffee 50 years ago. They are now neck and neck with South America in coffee, as you know. There's a lot of Vietnamese coffee now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a maniacal, single-minded focus on agriculture. And I asked the government official, what are you going to do about your poor? Ang ganda ng sinabi niya, Father. Napakasimple, ha? Ang sabi niya, you know, we have a lot of poor people at the time, siguro 50% poverty. if we did not do anything, they were going to be a problem. But if we fed them and educated them, then they will become our asset. They will become our strength. And true enough, that's what they are now. Father, Carlo, I'm sure you must have heard, Vietnam just opened its first electric vehicle car manufacturing plant in the heart of California to sell to white Americans who were their enemies during the Vietnam War. And now they're friends.
Amazing.
So that's the long-winded answer to your ano about what's Vietnam doing right. Here's the best juxtaposition, Father, no? Ang isang planta ng Samsung doon employs 60,000. Okay? You know what you know how much export they make? Double the remittances of 15 million OFWs. That shows you the utter stupidity of the OFW strategy. Imagine 60,000 Vietnamese export $60 billion worth of Samsung. We have to export 15 million of our people and break their families down to bring back $30 billion. Tell me, Father, no? Kung hindi ba naman, I cannot find the words. It's happening in the 21st century when you have access to all this information and our leaders are clueless or couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next is after Vietnam. Okay, it's about our forecast to be a top 15. And you're right, it's going to be really, like I said, no. If you have OFWs, you will never have recession. You will keep growing because they work. See, our OFWs are not working in poor countries. They are working in rich countries, correct? That's why they can afford to keep sending money. But, ang problema po niyan, pagdating dito ng remittances, ito ang problema. Ito, with all due respect and my humble opinion, one of the main reasons why we are poor is not because of corruption. It is because of a dysfunctional business model in our economy where the rich businessmen, local and multinationals, have done nothing throughout the past 50 years except sell to the poor masa. Wala na ng pera ang pobre, binentahan mo pa. E di lalong nabaon sa utang. And that's why, when I came back from my overseas assignments a few years ago, that I was shocked. Lahat na po ng produkto natin nakasashay. Dati po, Father Tito, Carlo, I used to work with Procter & Gamble. We were one of the first, the pioneers in launching the shampoo in sachet. And we touted it as an innovation to deliver low cash outlay. I was so wrong. It's not an innovation. This is not a sign of progress, Carlo, Father Tito. This is the sign of the opposite of progress when people can no longer afford to pay for bigger sizes. Lahat na lang nakasashay. Hindi lang mga shampoo, pati pagkain, kape, Milo, Bear Brand. Father, dati may Nido. Alam niyo ba kung ba't wala ng Nido ngayon? Next, they decided Filipinos can no longer afford Nido. And they were not about to downgrade the quality of Nido. Bear Brand na lang ang kaya ng tao. That's not a sign of progress at all. It's a sign of the opposite of progress. Noong araw, alam niyo naman, mahal ang bumili ng soft drinks sa tindahan, kaya nilalagay sa plastic. 40. Hanggang ngayon, Father Tito, Carlo, hanggang ngayon, buong Asia yumaman. Hanggang ngayon, 90 million sa ating mga kababayan, ito pa rin. Ito pa rin ang ginagawa. So I said to my friends, stop selling to the poor. The poor don't need your sachets. The poor don't need your products. The poor needs your money. Papiliin niyo ang mahirap. Anong gusto niyo? Sandamakmak na sachet o mas malaking kita? Mas malaking sweldo? Mas malaki ang take home? They don't need your products. They need your money so they can buy better quality products at higher prices, in bigger packaging at higher prices. That will give you bigger margins so you can pay your people higher salaries and wages and bonuses that will give them a higher purchasing power so they can afford to pay. So that's how you unleash not just inclusive growth, but you unleash sustainable development. Because as you know, tayo po ang world's largest polluter of the oceans because of 60 billion sachets, Father. 60 billion sachets are attributed to the Filipinos dumping it in the oceans. Every year, 60 billion. We're poisoning the seas. To tayo nag-Earth Hour, tayo nag-climate change, nag-global warming. We, we are hypocrites. We are the world's largest polluter. We're not doing anything about it. The poor don't need this. They need this.
So, Sir Willie, how do we break the link? Kasi
Yeah.
Okay.
cycle siya.
Yes.
Cycle,
Yun
yeah.
na. So, yun na nga. Precisely. You have to have the president tell the rich, stop this madness. Stop selling to the poor masa. Wala na ngang pera, binentahan nyo pa. Di nabaon sa utang lalo ang pobre. Buy from the poor farmer and the fisherman. Buy from the poor laborer and the poor worker. Don't haggle them down. Buy from the poor MSME and buy from the poor agri-cooperative. Instead, we are importing everything, enriching foreign farmers, enriching foreign manufacturers, enriching foreign entrepreneurs, and impoverishing our own people. So, Carlo, I was just giving the numbers to Father Tito. Can you fathom this? After 40 years post Marcos, we have more poor people today. EDSA has failed. No ifs or buts. You cannot hide the numbers. 90 million Filipinos admit to being poor or borderline poor despite EDSA 1 and EDSA 2. While the rest of Asia has gone richer because they did not export their people, they exported their products. Magkakaano ho yan? We neglected agriculture, we exported our people, we have brain drain, we have low IQ, we did not develop world-class quality products. Did you notice, Carlo, Father Tito, it's been 125 years since we gained independence. Until now, there's no world-class Filipino brand.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Because we just focused on ourselves, parochial, local parochial. That's not the Asian economic miracle model.
I'm just curious, no, because eventually I'd like to discuss this as our last gap topic, no. Are there any projects going on that could possibly be signs of hope and something? Kasi part of what we want to advocate in Proyekto Pilipino is encouraging people to do something to build our nation, no.
Well, Father, this is precisely it. No one, let me ask you, Father Tito and Carlo, no? Have you ever heard anyone talk like this?
Not in the same passionate way.
No, but the substance of what I'm talking about. Don't sell
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
poor, buy from the
yeah.
poor. Father, can you imagine? We are all experienced, educated. And no one has talked like this. Hindi po ako nagmamagaling. Sabi ng iba sa aking YouTube channel, nagmamagaling ka yata o nagyayabang. Hindi po. Hindi ako nagyayabang, hindi ako nagmamagaling. Ang pinagyayabang ko po, ang kagalingan ng ating karatig bansa. Lahat po sila umunlad. You know, when Deng Xiaoping took over from Mao Zedong in 1978, and he noticed that China was mired in poverty because of communism, remember his famous words? It does not matter if the mouse is black or white, meaning it's whether capitalism or communism. As long as it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, as long as it catches the mice, which is poverty. And that's why they combined a communist political system with a totally capitalistic Western system of economics. All right? You know what he said? Poverty is not socialism. Well, poverty is not Christianity either. Poverty is not socialism. We will all get rich together. Father Tito, Carlo, I've never heard a single leader from the time of Aguinaldo up to Marcos say we will all get rich together. Only Deng Xiaoping and the rest of Asia followed that model, which is based on the Singapore model. Lee Kuan Yew envied the Philippines. After, you remember, Singapore was booted out of the Malayan Federation in the 1960s, no? And they were so poor. And all the experts saying, you're not going to survive. And look at them now. Their per capita GDP is $100,000 per person, US. We are at 3,800. Sabi naman tao, oh, kasi konti lang sila. Then let's look at China. They are 13,000 US dollars per person. We are at 3,800 and they have 10 times our population. So yung mga anti-population, yung mga pro-RH, yung mga anti-life, walang masasabi. Just look at China. Mas mayaman sila dahil ginamit nila ang productivity ng kanilang mga tao. Can you imagine we have tens of millions with low IQ and stunting? So if you have low IQ, most probably your income in the future when you join the workforce is not high, it's low. So it's a vicious cycle. If I grow up with a low IQ, I can only get a low income job. My children will have lower IQ. We have a crisis.
Yeah.
That's
Really,
why I'm
really, one of the things that you said, no, yung breaking the cycle is the rich should buy from the poor, no?
Yes, Father.
So that's one of the things you're advocating, no? But how do you operationalize that, no? In a macro way, no? Because it cannot be maybe just very quick. No, I'm actually still in it, but I came from the planning week of Caritas Philippines, no, and one of the topics we discussed today was kabuhayan, no, livelihood for the we cater to the poorest segments of society, no, through the Philippine Church, no, and that's one of the things we're talking about, no, how do we get their products, bring them to the market, no, and but
I'll cite you one very, very concrete example, Father. Okay, again, executed so well by the religious. Okay, the Good Shepherd Sisters. I'm sure you remember how they started off their ube jam in Baguio. They buy from the poor ube farmers. Okay, they sell. Alam niyo kung magkano ngayon ang ube jam, Father? It's not for the poor. It's 500 pesos yung isang boat. 500 pesos na.
Hindi, tsaka ano pa, you cannot buy more than X number of bottles.
Exactly. Yeah, they sell to the rich. That's the only way they can help the poor Cordillera students go through college.
But really, how do you scale that up, di ba? For me, that's the question, di ba?
Well, first of all, before we scale it up, we just have to accept with all humility. Ito, Father, tatagalogin ko na para talagang, kasi mas malakas ang dating eh. Pag enrich the poor, sabi ko, pag ako, mayaman, nagbenta sa mahirap, okay? Sinong yayaman? Yung mahirap o ako? Pwede ako. Kape man yan, Bear Brand, soft drinks, okay? Alaon. Ako yayaman. O pag ako yumaman, sila naghirap, okay? Makonsensya naman ako. Mahirap na nga, Father, pinagkakitaan ko ang mahirap. My God, what a Christian country. Christian country pa tayo, pinagkakitaan natin ang mahirap. Fooling them and fooling ourselves, telling ourselves we are giving them this sachet or this tingi mentality, this prepaid load. Father, meron pang ang piso Wi-Fi. Can you imagine? Piso Wi-Fi, that's not a sign of progress. Huwag niyong pagkakitaan ng mahirap. Okay, Father, you remember we just had I remember your homily during the Feast of Christ the King, Matthew 25:40, at the final judgment, people who went to hell did not commit a sin of commission. It was a sin of omission. When our Lord said, you goats, get out of my sight. When did we ever offend you? Whenever I was hungry, and thirsty and naked and homeless, you did not do unto me. So in other words, if we impoverish the poor, we impoverish the Lord. But if we enrich the poor, we enrich the Lord. Father, Asia Pacific did not need Christianity. That's why we are the worst example to become Christians. Can you imagine the whole Asia Pacific eliminated poverty, enriched their people to a level of prosperity and quality of life that will put to shame a Christian nation, the only Christian nation in Asia. Okay, there's Timor, but still the biggest and the oldest. They did not need the church. It's common sense. And Jesus said, so from a material perspective, economic perspective, it's common sense. A businessman would rather do business in a market with people with higher purchasing power. Tama po ba, Carlo and Father? Any self-respecting businessman would want to do business kung saan malaki yung purchasing power, not in a market with a low purchasing power. So, everyone must try to increase the purchasing power. Hindi na taas ang sweldo, tumaas pa ang presyo. Kaya ano nangyari? Shrinkflation. Napansin niyo ba sa mga fast food? Ano nangyayari sa serving, Father? Carlo, lumalaki ba parang sa Amerika o paliit ng paliit?
Yeah.
Hindi lang paliit ng paliit, tumataas pa yung presyo. That's why ang tawag dyan, shrinkflation. Nag-shrink na yung kinakain natin, tumaas pa yung presyo. Double whammy ang taong bayan.
Yeah.
So we are doing it. So it's, Father, it has.
So what are the possible, let's say kami ni Carlo, no? What are the possible things that we can do? And
Father,
the
you have
question,
connect. Father, CBCP will listen to you. The MAP, the MBC, okay, the PCCI, all the business leaders will listen to you, not to me.
no,
Tama ba, Carlo?
kasi ano there are three things that we talk about in Caritas, and I've been trying to drive this down I don't want to say their throats, no, but all of these programs that are pro-poor, the battle cry I've been pushing is these programs need to be sustainable, one. But no matter how good your program is and sustainable, unless you can replicate it, okay, two, and three, replicate it in scale. That's going to make an impact on the lives of the poor, no? So
Agree, Father, but
yeah, no, but with what you've discussed, Willie, I agree, di ba? Buy from the poor, do not sell it to them, no? So and but how do we encourage people to do something, no? Ako yun, kasi that's the one of the goals, di ba, Carlo, of Proyekto Pilipino, kasi we're very proud to say na because of our topic, for example, on agriculture, we're now working with some farmers groups, no? And because of our topic on stunting and malnutrition, we're now working with two groups, no? And all coming out of this conversation, no? So Carlo, you want to add to that? So
No, it's a very hard, parang ang hirap simulan, no, Sir Willie? Kasi,
Carlo, okay, may I? Alam mo, madaling, I'll make it very simple. It's not a theory. It is the secret sauce of the Asian economic miracle. Mahirap yan sa mayayaman. I'll share with you a very, very, I tried to reach out to my own circle. Top entrepreneurs, prominent businessmen, presidential advisors and all that. You know the kind of response I got? Hindi ka mahirapan sa mahirap. Lahat ho ng sinabihan ko nito, they get it. Alam niyo kung sino tumututol? Yung mahirap o mayaman? Exactly. Father, one top educator, okay, in marketing, kuno sabi niya, Willie, I respect your opinion, but I don't agree with it. In other words, he believes we continue to sell to the poor. Oh my God. And then a prominent entrepreneur in the bakery business said, I told him, hey, are you not concerned that SWS reports record high poverty? You know what he said? The most callous statement I've ever heard. Really, the poor the poor are rising, but they're happy. Oh my God. And the third is probably the worst, because I said, hey, we have to do something about this. So I was working through the channels like you. But this rich businessman told me, Willie, I'm sorry, I cannot support your advocacy to enrich the poor, to stop selling to the poor. Why not? I thought he would say, because it doesn't make sense. He said, because my family and my company would not be rich today if we did not sell to the poor. Oh my God. And I said, precisely, you have enriched yourselves at the expense of the poor. So he unfriended me on Facebook. So the biggest challenge, Father Carlo, is not the taong bayan. It's the people on top who have accumulated all these resources you're talking about in your third topic by selling to the poor. There's a second reason, aside from this dysfunctional business model, that only the Filipinos do and not our neighbors. Again, our neighbors did not sell to the poor, they bought from the poor and they sold to the rich. They did not export their people, they exported their products. Another thing that they did not privatize, Father Tito, Carlo. No Asia Pacific country I know privatized their strategic major utilities, electricity, water, gas, telco, internet, infrastructure, tollways, expressways, airlines, airports, ports. Lahat po yan, pag-aari ng gobyerno. Why? That does not need entrepreneurs. That's a monopoly. Okay? Para merong alternative streams of revenue ang ating gobyerno. Hindi taas ng buwis. Hindi utang ng utang. 15 trillion pesos na ang ating utang. Wala pong pag-asang bumabayan. Bakit? Pinrivatize natin lahat. If you go to Singapore, the plane that you ride on, the airport that you land in, the MRT that you ride in, the tollway that you go through, the housing that you see left and right, they are all government owned. That's why their taxes are the lowest. 15% in the ASEAN, tayo 30%. Mantakin po ninyo, Father Tito and Carlo. Singapore's per capita GDP is 100,000 US dollars per person, but their tax rate is only 15%. Tayo, $3,800 lang ang per capita GDP. Tatagain tayo ng 30%. Bakit? Pinrivatize lahat eh. Some people will say, yeah, but really, the government is incompetent. I agree. But the solution is not to privatize. The solution, Carlo, is to professionalize. So I say no to privatization, yes to professionalization. In other words, have the MVPs and the RSAs, the Lopez family, the Ayalas, the Aboitis, the C and the Gokme, they can manage it, but let the people continue to own it so that the government does not have to keep borrowing, that our people and our children and grandchildren will never be able to repay. Lahat po ng Asian countries hindi nag-privatize. Isa pang malaking pagkakamali. Kaya, Father, the rich get richer. Imagine ang business model ng rich to sell to the poor, okay? And then also to monopolize the utilities. Talaga walang pag-asa yung mahirap.
Yeah. Okay,
Kaya,
so yeah, Carlo, final words before we wrap up.
Yeah. At the end of the day, Fads, ang tinitingnan natin dito, balik natin yung inclusive growth, no?
Yeah.
Na where I work in, Sir Willie, I work for a multinational, and particularly ang mainit na usapan niyan sa mga multinationals, lalo na sa energy sector, yung sustainable development. And ang laging pinag-uusapan diyan ngayon, yung mga, I would say, enlightened companies, yung walang naiiwanan. Uh, uh, the growth, an inclusive growth for all. So, kasi alam natin yung development, iba-ibang stages eh. May ibang bansa na nauna, may iba na nanuhuli. Pero lagi nating kailangan sabihin, dapat walang naiiwan pagka nagde-develop tayo. And I think this is something we always have to to keep in mind when we think of our own national development. Na and this is where dumarating yung the rich just get richer and the poor just gets poorer. Tayo lahat Pilipino, di ba? So, kung meron pang isang Pilipino na nakikita natin na stunted, na malnourished, na kulang sa edukasyon, are we content to see that? Are we content to be able to call ourselves Filipino? So, that should be the start of how we tackle this conversation. And thank you, Sir Willy, for bringing this up. And maraming paraan na, like you said, and that's just one way of look. That's a great way of looking at it. It's something definitely to rattle the minds of entrepreneurs. And I hope whoever is listening, this opens some doors to innovative ways of making sure we truly reach inclusive growth. So.
Thank you, Carlo. Willy, thank you very much. I mean, I certainly learned a lot and admire your passion, and hopefully nga, it should inspire people to think of something, no? To think of something. Siguro, let me end with what Bishop Bagaporo was telling our different heads of the different programs of Caritas Philippines. Sabi niya, this coming 2-3 years, let's work on this on our poverty reduction program, sabi niya, with conviction. Paniwalaan natin, mahalaga itong ginagawa natin. With courage, huwag tayong matakot. And the term that he used kasi para 3C is courier. Sabi niya, the right vehicles to do this. No?
Courier.
Courier, yeah. So I think really this is one of those right vehicles, 'di ba? Yung inclusive growth, 'di ba? And I like that idea of buy from the poor. Ako, I think that's the way to go and to support agriculture, no? So really, thank you very much, Carlo. Thank you, and we hope we can have you back, 'di ba? And maybe have a real discussion with people advocating agriculture, 'di ba? Magandang kwentuhan 'yan, 'di ba? So again, mga kaproyekto, ito ang Proyekto Pilipino, nagbabalik sa inyo for our new season for 2024, and hopefully this conversation will, sabi nga ni Carlo, mapaisip, di ba, ang mga tao, and hopefully try to see what can we do, what is our share in the project of building our nation. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you.
Thank you.